Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I'm calling the meeting of Wednesday, November 5th to order. And today we have 3 items on the agenda, and there's no proposed changes to the agenda, right? So we'll take those items in order. Is there any announcements or appeals?
No, Ms. Reardon, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the show on items not on the agenda today? No? Seeing no one, we'll move to the first item, which is at 835 West Mission Street. If the applicant would like to come up and have a seat at the table. Ms. Walker, when you're ready.
The project is located on a 5,408 square foot lot located at the corners of West Mission Street and Gillespie Street. The site has a 15-foot front yard setback along the West Mission as the primary front yard and a 10-foot secondary front yard setback along Gillespie Street. It's currently improved with a 1,106 square foot residence, a 230 square foot detached accessory room, and 1-car garage. The garage was legally converted to allow for an accessory room with a full bathroom back in 1947. The proposed project includes the construction of a 92 square foot master bathroom within the existing non-conforming open yard area. The current open yard area, as we've measured it, is 726 square feet, and with the project it would be reduced down to 627 square feet with the gross addition. So the modification requested would be to reduce the non-conforming open yard area. The site is a small lot with the property that is well landscaped throughout along the sides of the driveway on both sides, the whole front. There's a 3-foot fence that surrounds the whole front property, and along the secondary front yard, which provides a great deal of useful open yard area that would normally not be considered in the required open yard. This useful open yard would actually increase the existing to 1,004 square feet and the proposed down to 905 square feet. Staff is concerned that the existing accessory room with a full bath could potentially provide a zoning compliance problem it has in the past. So we would recommend that a zoning compliance letter be recorded with the property. Staff is recommending that the hearing officer approve the project, making the finding that the mod is necessary to secure the appropriate improvement of the lot because the proposed addition is minimal. The lot is constrained by 2 front yards, and the current open yard is non-conforming. However, the usable yard areas exist elsewhere on the property. Said approval would be subject to the condition that the zoning compliance declaration be recorded on the property prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, thank you. I have a question regarding the open area. Existing, you said there's 726 square feet. Is that to the 10-foot setback, or is that to the setback line? Which one?
That's to the 10-foot setback line right here.
All
so it's the area I surrounded in blue.
Okay. Okay.
And then what we figured the useful open yard would actually be out to the fence. Here.
Excluding the front yard on Mission Street?
Excluding Mission Street, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. If you'd like to state your name and association with the project, and if you have any
Sure, my name
additional
is Brandon Smith. I am the property owner for 835 West Mission Street. And I'm also the applicant regarding this modification.
Okay, is that it? All right. I don't have any further questions. I would like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here in the audience who would like to speak on 835 West Mission Street? No. I would like to note we received a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury expressing general concerns with the project. She routinely follows the projects in the system and submits letters. Just note that for the record. And with that, I'll close the public hearing. I reviewed the staff report, and I visited the site and walked around the neighborhood, and I recognize the site has many constraints. It's substandard. It's minimum lot size 7,000 square feet, and it's about 5,400 square feet. And it has the two front yards, and the way it was developed was nice, pushed back from the street to give a nice
Open yard,
Yeah.
Mission Street.
and presence. However, it does limit future improvements. And I like the location of your proposed improvement. It is towards the rear. It respects the setbacks. It does reduce the amount of open area on your site. However, that area right now is not really usable. It's tucked in the back. I noticed it was paved, and it was more of like back of house area. So I think in terms of an appropriate location on the site for an addition, that is an area. So with that, I make the findings outlined in the staff report, and I approve your project, subject to the condition of approval that the zoning declaration be recorded against the property.
Okay. My only question is, what is the zoning declaration exactly?
Yeah. If you, this,
It's a fairly standard document. We require it on a lot of properties. If there's a floor plan configuration that could easily lend itself to being used as a separate dwelling unit, we just, it's a template format that we have recorded against the property that puts you as well as future owners on notice that this property is only intended to be used for one dwelling unit.
okay. My action's appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission. They also have oversight authority of all my actions, and during that same 10-day period, they can review the project and decide whether to call it up for a hearing before then. And if that were to occur in any instance, whether it's a Planning Commission or appeal, Ms. Walker would be in contact with you.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next project's at 707 Chiquita Road. If the applicant would like to come up. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. And whenever you're ready, Ms. Brooke.
Am I facing you that way?
That way's okay. Because then it's the right way on the TV.
Okay, that's good. Okay, this property is located at 707 Chiquita Road. It's a slightly over 13,000 square foot site. There's an existing single-family residence with attached two-car garage on the site. It's a steeply sloping property, so the development is fairly close to Chiquita Road relative to the size of the site. On this property, there's a 20-foot setback. Typically in this zone, which is an E2 zone, a 25-foot setback would be required, but because of the steepness of the front yard, a 5-foot reduction is allowed by the zoning ordinance, so the actual setback is 20 feet in this area, and as you can see, some of the existing development, primarily that two-car garage, is already encroaching into that setback. The request is for a modification to propose a new trellis here, approximately 9 by 19 feet in the front yard setback. I'll let the applicant speak to the reasons why the homeowners would like to propose that. In brief, they would like to expand the outdoor living space on their property. Staff is recommending denial of this modification. It was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board, and they did have positive comments that the trellis would improve the architecture and usability of the area and that it is compatible with the neighborhood. However, it's staff's belief that the modification is not consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance. And largely because the ordinance recognizes the challenge of developing on these steeply sloped properties, and this property and others like it are allowed the benefit of a reduced front setback for that reason. and we don't believe that a further structural encroachment into the front setback is necessary to enjoy that space. The trellis itself is the trigger for the modification, and it's not necessary. We don't believe the trellis is necessary improvement in order to enjoy that area or possibly improve it with a patio or a low screen wall to use it. Also, the denial of the modification we do not believe would cause an unreasonable hardship, as we believe there are other reasonable options for improving this outdoor space, as I mentioned, and they would conform to the ordinance. The property also contains 2 decks at the rear of the property, as well as a large screened patio on the first floor of the residence, so the property is not without other outdoor areas to enjoy. For all of these reasons, staff is recommending that the staff hearing officer deny the modification and make the findings in the staff report along with the additional reasons I stated at this time.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions for you right now. Oh, I think I was turned off. Oh, they must have heard. If you'd like to state your name in association with the project and provide any additional comments.
Sure. I'm Robert Mail, architect with RPM Architects, here representing the owner, Kevin Gleason, and have a number of things to go over with you. This one I'll put aside for now. We can refer to it if necessary. Some 10 years ago, there was an application made on this to build in the front yard. There had already been a carport there. They wanted to enclose it. The original house was built in 1951, and at that time it looks like a 10-foot setback was being used. It actually looks like they were going from the curb of the street instead of from their real property line. And up and down the street, you'll find that, as I see you have an aerial photo, very much the case. And here's the residence we're talking about. But you can see the proximity of all these other residences, even though there's a 60-foot right-of-way here and the road is only about 40 to 50 feet in width. So we can see that. I have that along the modification that was given for this at that time if we need it. I also have a number of photos here, which I think I'll go through first and then make my points.
Okay.
We have another of the aerial, which I prefer to use yours.
Yes. Oh, TV will get it. Do you want?
Might have to.
Yeah, I don't know if you want.
There we are. Which shows the adjacent residences. Here's the one we're concerned with again. It does have a front patio currently that they're removing just to put down another patio. It also has a low wall out in front that they're removing to put back at some point when the landscape designer works it out. This property adjacent to them does have a front patio and in fact has a rather large umbrella there and some seating underneath it. We find a deck area here, not quite in the front yard. There is a deck area up in here that once again is in the front yard with an awning. There's another deck here very, very close to the property line. So what we're asking for is enjoyed by a lot of the properties throughout this area. And if you drive up and down the street, you'll find many, many front porches in the front yards. And the only thing that differentiates this trellis from a porch is we don't have a solid cover over the top of it. If we were doing that, we would then be proposing a porch here today, which is a use that is allowed in the front area. We also have along with us photos of those other residences. There's one just left out of the picture, which is this one, which they have a large deck area over the garage, which sits right on the street. This residence, I believe, is this one, and this is a trellis up in here in the front of it. This is another one adjacent to us. This is the same one we've seen. This is probably the third, I believe it's this house down here with their walls. And put these two aside. This is the adjacent residence we're referring to with the wall and the umbrella that stands out on this aerial photo with the patio up here. And these are of the residence that we've got. This is the residence across the street. It has a rather large deck area back here, but in fact has very large stone walls in the easement area. Finally, I'll put this one out here too, just to show what it will probably be very similar to looking like when we're done. We have French doors here. That's what you're seeing through there. And I'll get on to the benefits of the trellis here. So let's see. We also have we have a colored elevation of this. I don't know if it's. This is the intent along here. We have to remember this building has a U shape. So this garage is pulled out towards you. This portion of the building is pulled out towards you as well. It's U in shape. The house, when this gentleman bought it about a year ago, we immediately noticed in the walkthrough with him it had no dining room. And so what we did is we took a front bedroom. It was the most convenient to the kitchen. Otherwise, you would have had to take the living room. And we converted this bedroom into a dining room. And for good lighting, put French doors into the outside. This gave us an opportunity to open the dining up to the outside garden area that you just saw in the pictures. So the owner would like to be able to sit outside in a nice garden environment and have a cup of coffee or whatever and not be blasted by the sun. The deck's on the back side of this. That is exactly the case. You can't escape from the sun over there. You could put an awning over it, but it's about 30 feet down to any garden-type environment, which is where he likes to sit out. It also gets extremely windy at that point. So we were hoping for, as much of Santa Barbara homes do, to have a nice smooth transition from the interior environment to the exterior. We don't have to be closed off from it here in such a nice climate. So the design committee in their review found that this helps to beautify the front of the house. And staff said the front yard is a buffer between the residential use and public right-of-way. And we see that to be the case in most areas. However, once again, as your aerial photo shows here, this is a dead-end street. And so it has a great feeling of privacy. They only have one neighbor across the street. And this is actually a gutter here. Sidewalk doesn't begin till down here. So there is no sidewalk on their side of the street to help pedestrians if they wanted to go this way. And the sidewalk, other sidewalk goes on this side of the street, however, stops 2 lots before you get there. We've talked to Public Works. There's no intent to ever continue the street through. This is a canyon here. They also have no intent to ever widen it, is what they told us. And so for us, this is a very private area, not a very public one. I don't think if he was located in on some other street in the downtown, he would want to sit out in his garden. It would be too public. They should suggest expansion of the rear deck with shade or low wall. In the front, as I mentioned, we do plan on doing a low wall in the front. There is a deck, but it's not at this level. You had mentioned that a while ago, a screen deck. Mm-hmm. Old plans show it to be, it's on the level below. And it was shown to be screened on some old plans, but it was never screened in, so it's open. You would have to take a cup of coffee, go downstairs, and go into this. And it's kind of cold and dank. We're not quite sure why it was created there. I've already mentioned that the neighbors often enjoy a similar setting to what we're asking for. And we don't consider it to be a room of the house that we're asking to expand into this area. We consider it to be what it is, a trellis. And in fact, if we go back to this plan right here, and if we take a straight edge here, if we connect, for instance, the corners of the house from here to here, you can see once again that this is a U shape and we're back within that zone. So we're projecting no farther forward, and certainly not nearly as much as this corner over here, into the front yard area than any other part of the house. This is further out, and all of this is further out. We just want to do a little trellis for shade, for vines to grow on. And I think that is about all I had on that.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions right now. I would like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would wish to address the staff hearing officer on 707 Chiquita Road? No. I would like to note we received a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury on this project also, expressing just general concerns on development. And did you receive a copy of it?
I have a copy of that, although it's not really legible to me.
Right. Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Does staff have anything they want to reply on?
No, not at this time.
Okay. To be quite honest with you, I am struggling with this project. What's before me today is a request for modification for the trellis. You are allowed to pave the front yard and to use it as the garden area. Technically, per the zoning ordinance, you're not supposed to store something out there more than 48 hours, so placing tables and stuff, technically that would be a violation of the zoning ordinance. However, like you said, people enjoy that kind of amenity. So on my site visit yesterday, I noticed that there was quite a few properties in this area that provide the patio area towards the street. But the Planning Commission and the Council's been clear about encroachments into the front setback. Generally, when we see improvements in the front setback, it's similar to what you were saying. You know, it's a porch. It's along the front of the building. It's maybe an entrance landing, a covered entrance landing that provides shelter as you're from the rain when you're trying to unlock the front door. Or it's along a walkway from a driveway to the front door. And this type and amount of encroachment has been generally discouraged. And that's where I'm struggling with. The findings with being consistent with the zoning ordinance and whether the modification is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. So I don't know if...
It has a side benefit, this trellis does, to the people here in terms of privacy, which is something we're talking about being in the public eye and all of that, which is, I'm sure you saw the house across the way, which we have photos of here too.
It's quite elevated.
Yeah, and they are looking down on this structure. And so we were hoping to have that to also relieve that, because then they're not looking right into their dining room. So that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at it as more of a landscaping kind of element, because it is light and airy, and we do want to plant vines along it. So I think this is very representative, this color elevation here, of how minimal it is and of its landscape architecture kind of nature. It will break and soften the light, but especially through these doors will give a lot of privacy to the interior. And who knows if they'll ever actually use it to do anything more than sit out there in two chairs as people do up and down the street and have a cup of coffee. I kind of see that that's what's going to happen. You certainly wouldn't want to have a Thanksgiving dinner or anything out there. It's still there's cars that park along the street, and it'd be uncomfortable. But for a while, to spend some time in your garden, especially, we developed this on some very hot days when we were out there. And we thought it would be quite nice to be able to sit in this very pretty garden that's out there that you've seen in some of these photos, although you have to imagine this one with French doors here now. And, with a fountain and all that, but be able to sit in the shade of that without putting something rather temporary up, such as an umbrella and all that, which tend to blow away. That sort of thing. So we look at this more as a landscape architecture kind of element. We could even make it detached from the building, not hooked to the building. But we're getting to more semantics then. But that's how we look at it, as kind of a landscape architecture element.
Now, does it need to be so wide? Can you make it not...
We could pull it back towards the building, yes, we could do that. This is just what felt comfortable at the time.
what would you,
I suppose we have a scale.
we do, I brought them.
Actually, we do have a good plan of it here too, which might be helpful. Let's see if we can find the floor plan.
Ms. Reardon, I could offer as a solution, it sounds like you might be heading that way, to consider something no more than 3 feet extending from the building, like we might consider for front entry porches, where it may allow the vegetation presence that you're showing and the elevation without the depth. I think it's about 9 feet or so
Well,
proposed
these
right now.
posts for, pardon me, are 7 feet out. And if we only had it 3 feet, if you came from the wall, you'd still be underneath the overhang here. You'd have to at least be the 3 feet out from there. But we could align with this existing post that's already there. Pulling back to that, if I may, that is back at approximately 5 feet, so we would be pulling these back 2 feet. Any more than that, you get almost an incidental kind of nothing kind of trellis if we pull back more than that.
And then what would be the overhang? Would it still come out here, or you'd pull it all back?
Oh, we would pull it all back. So we'd pull the whole thing back 2 feet everywhere. That way they can still get some shade from it on your total coverage. So instead of having a total from the wall of about 8 foot of shade on that, you'd have about 6 foot of shade off the wall that would be projected. However, with the sun angles, we'd get a little bit more shade.
Do you have
We
any,
could still train our vines on it.
do you have any other comments?
Yeah.
I would feel more comfortable with that. I understand the reasoning for the project, and like I said in my introductory comments, you can pave your front yard area, and you can. We want the interaction between the house and the street, and that's one of the reasons for porches. And that my concern was just the scope of the trellis, but reducing it back, pulling it back the 2 feet. I believe I can make the required findings and find that it is an appropriate improvement for the lot. So if you're agreeable to that.
We are.
The other question I would have, Renee, is there concerns with the lower level being used as a separate unit? Or is there a zoning declaration already filed, or is that something? I know there's interior access. I think there has been history of.
There was. This owner was made aware of that after he purchased the property. And then we looked into the old set of plans, which I have right here, and they had been made to remove that living unit from
Right.
down below.
Okay.
And turn it into just bedrooms and remove, I think they had a kitchen down. So there is none of that anymore.
As the other one.
I don't recall if a zoning compliance declaration has been recorded on the property. I do know that the approved set of plans shows our stamp on that area of the floor plan, which says that this is not supposed to be used as a dwelling unit. Now I'm not able to find it, but we could condition, if there hasn't already been one recorded, that we could record a zoning compliance declaration prior to building permit issuance for this application.
Now, if this helps you at all, we have done an interior remodel, which we pulled a permit for. Would that have come up at that time? In other words, we have a permit on this project right now. When you went up there, you probably saw them doing some work there.
Yeah, Ron.
And that's because there is a permit for the interior remodel and adding these doors.
Does it include the lower level? Or is it only the...
Does work include the
Yeah.
lower level?
Yeah.
They're patching and relocating some lights, which the inspector is aware of, but there's no, we're not moving any walls or anything like that.
So it may not be shown with that permit if the area of works this first...
Correct. The permit does not show the lower floor. only these plans show that how they readdressed it when it was remodeled some few years ago.
Well, what the zoning declaration is that Ms. Brooks said on the previous project, it just puts the property owner and future owners on notice that it's a single-family zone. It's only to be used for one dwelling unit, and so that's,
Oh, that's fine.
yeah.
I'm sure. I was just remarking in case it had already been done.
Yeah, if it's,
This permit.
yeah, I don't think, if it, the scope of work didn't include the lower floor, I don't think that our zoning plan checker would have reviewed that area and may not have commented on that.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I find that the project as altered today with the 2-foot reduced encroachment is consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance, and it provides for an appropriate improvement on the lot, subject to the condition that the zoning compliance declaration be recorded. And I could say if found necessary by the zoning plan checker. So if Brenda reviews it and says, oh, it's clearly not necessary, then it's not necessary.
Now, we have to reappear before the design review committee?
Correct.
I thought so.
Yeah, so my action is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission, and the Commission also has oversight authority, and there's a liaison that reviews all my actions and decides whether it would warrant a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and they typically do that during the same 10-day
Okay.
period. So if that would happen, Ms. Malazzo will be back from vacation by then, or Ms. Brooke would contact you.
Great.
Okay?
Well, thank you both very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Okay, the last project is 1307 Hillcrest Road. If the applicant would like to come up.
I'm not as prepared as the previous what you had, so I brought the plan along.
It's better to be safe, huh?
Okay, this project is located at 1307 Hillcrest Road. It's in the E1 zone, which is a single-family zone. There is existing on the property a single-family residence with a 2-car garage. And the proposal today is for an exit gate, actually, at this portion of the driveway. This property, although it's not the extent of the property is not shown on this plan, we do have another plan that shows that, has somewhat of a circular driveway. There's a driveway, yeah, you can see it here. It's an interesting configuration where it really has street frontage on 3 sides. This portion of the driveway is used as the entrance, and then typically exit out in this area of the site. So, yeah, so in this area. The proposal today is for an exit gate in approximately that area of the property, which is designated here in this orange color. And the reason for the modification is that it's proposed to be located closer than 20 feet from the front lot line, which the ordinance requires for fences and walls to be, if they are in excess of 3.5 feet tall, they need to be set back from the street. And this one is proposed to be 5 feet 11 inches, and so a modification is requested to allow that to be 17 feet from the front lot line. Staff is supportive of this modification. Typically, these are looked at very carefully to make sure that they work from a transportation perspective. Because of the way this property is used and that people use this as an entrance and exit out this way, transportation staff didn't have the concern that they might have in other cases about this not being the required 20-foot distance, because there's room for the gate to open and the vehicle to stop here to look for traffic. One concern that staff does have, and we're recommending this be a condition of approval, is that there's an existing tall hedge along this property line along Hillcrest, which does make visibility a challenge as you're coming out of the driveway to look up and see vehicles coming down the street. So we'd recommend that a condition be added that the vegetation adjacent to the driveway be brought into compliance with Municipal Code Section 2887-170 regarding hedges next to driveways. So staff recommends that the hearing officer find the modification is consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance and make the findings outlined in the staff report with the condition that the hedge be brought into compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. I have a question. The city council is contemplating suspending enforcement of certain sections of the hedge height. How would that affect this? Being the condition you had recommended was referencing that code section, whereas when I was out at the site, it appears it is truly a safety issue, in that it needs to be reduced down at a distance that transportation staff feels that it's safe to exit.
Correct. And the discussion you're referring to is a few weeks ago, City Council considered suspending application of certain section of the zoning ordinance regarding hedges. In that discussion, they made it clear, and we confirmed, that they don't want to suspend sections of that ordinance that have to do with traffic safety, and so we're preparing an ordinance to be considered by the City Council on November 18th, actually, and staff's recommendation is to suspend certain sections of that ordinance regarding hedges, but to not suspend the sections that deal with traffic safety, such as along driveways or adjacent to driveways and on street corners. So this would still fall under the purview of that section and would be enforced just as it has been up to this date, if the council decides to vote that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was all my questions. Okay. If you'd like to state your name and association with the project.
My name is Jules Bender, and I'm the owner of the property and occupy the property at 1307 Hillcrest Road.
Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, first of all, I was a little confused by the comments because when there was a site visit, we were discussing taking down a portion of the hedge, not the entire hedge. So I'm not quite sure what you were, it wasn't clear to me what you were suggesting in terms of taking down the hedge. Are we still talking about taking down part of the hedge as opposed to the entire hedge?
You want to answer?
Sure, I can answer that. You're correct. If the council votes, as I was just speaking about earlier, if they vote to suspend application or enforcement to hedges along front lot lines, typically hedges cannot exceed 3.5 feet within the first 10 feet of the property. Based on our conversation with City Council a few weeks ago, it seems like they may be moving in the direction of suspending enforcement of that particular section of the ordinance, but does not want to suspend the section that deals more closely with traffic safety, and that is the portion adjacent to the driveway. And the code would require that that portion, I believe it's 10 feet from either side of the driveway for a distance of 20 feet back. So because of the angle you have there on your property, we would probably go out with transportation staff and determine how much of this may be reduced, but it could be up to 20 feet back.
Oh, okay. Okay. My other point that I'd like to make, if it's going to be reviewed by transportation, and I know that you were there too, is that we do it based on actually improving the visibility when we exit, because what happens here, and when you did come out for the site visit, I have been living here for 8 years, and I do use a reflective mirror here, as I always stop and I'm very careful about checking, but you had some concern about it, be it that it rained or fell down, which I never really thought about. But after you left, and thinking about the opening here, and knowing that it is, as many properties on the Riviera, you have to be careful when you exit your property, including my neighbor who has a different situation. I realized, and I measured this is 35 feet. When I pull out, if I pull out and I hug this side of the property, I don't believe, and I would review this with the safety officer. By reducing anything here because of the slope of the road and the slope here, it's going to improve my visibility. So that's my only sensitivity, that whatever we do, that there's a clear reason that improves visibility, and it's just not an arbitrary decision to take down the hedge. And as long as, that's the point that I wanted to make. But I want to make it clear that this is 35 feet from this point to this point here. And I realize while I use that mirror, the alternative is if I hug this side of the property, I have pretty good visibility when I get to this point in terms of any approaching cars.
And we understand that, but it's from the edge, the way the code's written, it is from the edge of the driveway, so it would be from this side too. But I was wondering, have you had any thought of just making this a solid fence and then backing up, turning around and using just the one-way and getting rid of this access, and then the visibility wouldn't be an issue?
It just wouldn't, it couldn't back out.
You couldn't come around, okay.
I could, would be heck of it. You were at the property.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't drive actually on it. I drove up it and looked. And
With all due respect to my wife, I wouldn't.
okay, that's fine. It was just a question I had.
No, this is relatively, it would be difficult to do.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing, and seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And I didn't receive a letter on this project from Paula Westbury?
No.
Okay, so no letters were received. Okay, well, like I indicated, I visited the site and I've read the staff report, and I believe the gate is an appropriate improvement. And with the reduction of the hedge, which staff is, understanding with your desire to keep the privacy and to only reduce the amount necessary for safety.
Right.
And then with council's discussion on the suspension, at least for 2 years, of the enforcement of that section, it would be just limited to that truly needed for safety. And so with that, I make the findings outlined in the staff report and approve your project, subject with that condition regarding the reduction of the hedge height for safety reasons, just in the minimal area necessary.
Okay. And let me just understand, so what is the next step? Someone going to visit the site, or tell me exactly how do we proceed before I can go ahead and get a building permit?
As part of the building permit review, your plans will be routed to the zoning section, and a plan check will be done at that time. We could do the site visit with transportation staff anytime between now and that
Okay.
submittal and review of your plans, so that we could understand. In order to eliminate the need for possible correction to your plans, we could do that before you submit for building, so that you could incorporate that note on your plans how much of the hedge needs to be trimmed back. And I'd recommend when Roxanne Milazzo gets back from vacation next week, you contact her, and then she can set up an appointment with transportation staff to go out there and look at that with you, and then you can note that on your plans.
Okay. That sounds very reasonable.
Okay, and my action is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission, and they also have the oversight authority to review my actions and decide whether a public hearing is necessary before the Planning Commission. And if either of those two scenarios happened, Ms. Milazzo or Ms. Brooke would be in contact with you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I adjourn the meeting.